Good morning, Bimblers. And you join me at St Cross's Church in Appleton Thorn. We bimbled here before, when we went to Antrobus. And I thought it would be a fitting start to today's bimble, because we're going to Knutsford. You'll see why at the end. Anyway, let's bimble.
But only shown in pictures sewn from my arms. Over time, clouds kept the light from those eyes. Still, love grown consumed, and you know I'll never let it go.
We've come the long way round Bimblers, so that we could bimble down something special. Part of a runway, or at least the road that went around a runway. This used to be Stretton Air Station, and it was built at the start of the Second World War by the RAF, so it was RAF Stretton. I don't know why it's called RAF Stretton, because it's in Appleton Thorn. And RAF Appleton sounds so much better if you ask me. It was originally built to send up planes to shoot down German bombers and have dogfights with the Luftwaffe, because they would send fighter planes to protect the bombers. But apparently the Luftwaffe had a change in tactic, and it meant that the RAF stopped using RAF Stretton and they gave it to the Navy. In 1942 it became the Royal Navy Air Station, Black Cap. That sounds better than Stretton or Appleton if you ask me. We sometimes forget that the Navy have pilots, and it's not just the Air Force. I mean, the Navy have those great big ships, don't they? Aircraft carriers. There's a little bit of friendly rivalry between the RAF pilots and the Navy pilots, and in the UK, the two biggest exponents of that rivalry would be Prince William and Prince Harry. Prince William was a Navy helicopter pilot, and Prince Harry was an RAF helicopter pilot. Over in America, the first astronauts were made up of Navy pilots and Air Force pilots. In fact, the first American in space, or the second person in space, Alan Shepard, he was a Navy pilot, and he went on to be the fifth person to walk on the moon. And he was also the oldest person to walk on the moon. The Royal Navy Air Station Black Cap closed in 1958, and it's sort of just been left. It's been made into an industrial estate at one end and a prison at the other end, but the runway is still there. It's behind a barbed wire fence these days, but back when I was a kid, I used to be able to drive on it. My dad used to take me and my sister in his little Reliant Robin three-wheeler, and we'd go down the runway and pretend we were a Spitfire. But you can't get in these days, not without scaling the barbed wire fence. But you can make do with riding around the perimeter, still pretending you're a Spitfire. Let's bimble.
You'll find it's right. I'll only ever know how to speak my mind. I'll only ever know how to speak my mind. Love grows
our second portage, Bimblers, we reach Legh. Legh was mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086, and it was listed as having 2 thanes. What's a thane? Well, a thane used to be an Anglo-Saxon nobleman with a bit of a military bent, if you like. Obviously, William the Conqueror came along, the fellow who told him to write the Domesday Book of 1086, and he binned them both off in favour of having some French noblemen. And another 2 families took over to be the local posh lads. That would be the Legh family and the Legh family. You had the Legh family of West Hall, that was Legh spelt like Leigh in Lancashire, Leigh near Wigan, Leigh, and you had the Legh family of East Hall, that was spelt like High Legh, or if you're from Warrington, Leigh Street, where the old baths used to be, or WA1, rest in peace. Neither West Hall or East Hall exist these days. East Hall was demolished in the 1970s to make way for the Thelwall Viaduct. Apparently it looked a bit like Tatton Hall, at Tatton Park in Knutsford, where we're going today. We're not going to Tatton Park. Sorry to spoil that for you. Way too expensive. West Hall was demolished in the 1950s, and the only part of it that remains is this church behind me, St John's Church. This was built by the Legh family as sort of like a private chapel to save them going all the way to St Cross Church in Appleton Thorn, I guess. It was originally built by a Thomas Harrison, and I didn't know it, but we featured 2 of his bridges in a couple of my arty montages. That would be Grosvenor Bridge over the River Dee in Chester and Skirton Bridge over the River Lune in Lancaster. He also built the Gentlemen's Club in the centre of Liverpool, the one near the Burger King, round the corner from Primark. Unfortunately, his original design burnt down in 1891, and a new church was built using the same foundations and some of the same walls the year after, and that church was designed by Edmund Kirby. If you remember a few Bimbles back, we mentioned Edmund Kirby. In fact, we started today's Bimble at St Cross Church, which was a church that he designed. You might ask, why did he build it in this mock Tudor style and not out of stone or brick like he did his other churches? Well, it's because West Hall was a Tudor hall. It was just like Speke Hall or Hesketh Hall, both of which we've bimbled to in the past. And in the 1950s, they knocked it down. Madness. Anyway, onwards and upwards to Knutsford.
It's yours, just wait. You do your best along the way, but it's those arms that told me I don't care if it's yours or mine. Without you it's just a waste of time. You showed me from the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours, big aspirations need a heart to hold you down. Though some get lost along the way, as sure as night designed the day, as long as I'm allowed to say, it's my heart that told me I don't care, you just disagree. Without you it wasn't meant to be. You showed me from the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours, big aspirations need a heart to hold you, I don't care, you can say what you like. I'm a peace-loving person, but I know I'm right. It's as easy as right from wrong. I'm I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I wrote this song. You showed me from the start. Such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you down from the start. Such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you down.
Well, Bimblers, you're going to have to get used to the sound of aeroplanes overhead, because we've reached Knutsford and it's on the flight path for Manchester Airport, so we might get interrupted a few times. Knutsford apparently gets its name from King Canute, or King Canute, depending on how you like to say it. And he was the King of England from 1016, and the King of Denmark from 1018, and the King of Norway from 1028. He was basically the king of the North Sea, right up until 1035 when he died. He was the son of King Harold Bluetooth, and that's where we get the name Bluetooth for our wireless technology. Here comes one of those planes to interrupt us. They're like clockwork. It's one after another. Where was I? He was the son of King Harold Bluetooth. And that's actually where we get the name Bluetooth for our wireless technology, you know, on your mobile phone and your little speakers that you listen to in the back garden. That's him, King Harold Bluetooth. It was named Bluetooth because the company that designed it was Ericsson, and they're based in Sweden, so kind of that neck of the woods, isn't it? Knutsford is actually named after King Canute, or Canute, and it's actually called Knutsford because King Canute, or Canute, forded the River Lily here in Knutsford. He was apparently blessing the wedding between a local couple, and he made it possible to cross over the River Lily, which apparently in those days was rather dangerous, but these days it's a tiny little trickle that flows down a street. It's about 3 foot wide and about 6 inches deep. Some people say that it should be named Europe's smallest river. Only by width and depth though, not by length. Officially Europe's smallest river is the Kofferselva River in Norway on the island of Hitra. And the smallest river in the world is the Tambarasi River in Indonesia. That's 20 metres long and 15 metres across. It's nearly a square. Whereas the River Lily is a big wiggly worm that goes all the way down a street here in Knutsford. I've got to say, if this is what the river looked like back in King Canute's day, I think I could have been king. I could have forded this river with 3 bags of gravel from B&Q. I mean, I suppose the way it worked back in those days was King Canute would have been right hard, wouldn't he? He just basically went around in his ships, battering people. Not like today, with your divine bloodlines. I think that was all made up by wimpy lads, you know. I mean, if you had the same rules today, wouldn't Tyson Fury be the King of England? He'd batter King Charles, wouldn't he? Let's bimble. The first church we're going to look at here in Knutsford, we're going to look at two, is St John the Baptist Church. It was built in 1744 at a cost of £4,000. That's about £800,000 in today's money. It's said in the church records that it was built by a J. Garlive. But the funny thing about that is, there are no other buildings built by a J. Garlive. And there's no records of a J. Garlive being an architect. Some people believe that it must have been a J. Gatlive, possibly John Gatlive from Legh in Warrington. He was a master bridge builder, so he was handy with some bricks. Or it could have been another John Gatlive that lived in Macclesfield, fairly local. He was a master stonemason, and there are records of that John Gatlive being paid to do an estimate and a design for a church just north of Knutsford. So I reckon it was him. But there's another church here in Knutsford that was built by my favourite. Let's Bimble. Geez Louise, Bimblers. It's hot today. Sweating all my sun cream off. Anyway, we started today's Bimble at St Cross Church in Appleton Thorne, and we end today's Bimble at St Cross Church, Knutsford. St Cross Church in Appleton Thorne was built by Edmund Kirby, as we previously said. But St Cross Church here in Knutsford, that was built by Edward Graham Paley in his second partnership with Paley and Austin. You have Sharp and Paley, then you have Edward Graham Paley on his own, and then you have Paley and Austin. That was when Mr. Paley went into partnership with a Hubert Austin. Who was he? Well, he actually studied under Sir George Gilbert Scott. It's all interrelated. In 1858 they built this St Cross's Church here in Knutsford, and in 1887 they built the tower on top. And then in 1889 they widened the aisles, and it all came to a cost of £7,580. That's about £780,000 in today's money. In 1906 Edward Graham Paley's son Henry Paley built the vestry here at this church, keeping it in the family. At that point Edward Graham Paley had been dead for a few years, and the company actually became Austin and Paley. That was Hubert Austin and Henry Paley. But eventually it became Austin, Paley and Austin. That was because Hubert Austin's son joined the company. That was up until the First World War. After he came back from the First World War, I think he went and did other things. Hubert Austin had another son that was interested in architecture though, a Bernard Tate. He did actually work for Austin and Paley for a short time, but Hubert Austin and Bernard Tate had a bit of a falling out. Judging by the fact that they have different last names, I don't think they were all that close, even though they were father and son. But Bernard Tate went on to be an architect for Lever Brothers, and he designed buildings in Warrington and at Port Sunlight on the Wirral. It's all interrelated. It's almost as if I planned these Bimbles.